Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to another episode that I'm doing, another reaction video actually, and it's kind of a reaction, it's kind of not. But anyways, before I get started, please make sure to subscribe and like, and also please share the video. Also, you might want to consider hitting the bell icon so you are notified every time I make a new video and you are up to date on all the content I put out. Now, let's get into the subject matter of the video. So, for those of you that don't know, there's a popular Ismaili Agha Khani polemicist. His name is Khalil Andani, who alleges and puts forth that he is a academic and he is a teacher and professor at Harvard, and he thinks that that gives him accolades and that he can speak on traditional Sunni Islam without being able to read or comprehend Arabic, and not being classically trained, simply just being trained by the secular world. He is a self-proclaimed professor of Islam. But regardless of that, I mean, he can call himself whatever he wants to, an expert in whatever. It's irrelevant to me. What we're concerned with is the claims, right? And the propaganda that is coming out now. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, you should know by now that Agha Khanis and Ismailis are generally not considered to be Muslim. They never have. In a separate discussion I've been having with him on Twitter, he's been alleging that they were considered to be Muslims, and that's the traditional approach. And I demonstrated very clearly that Ismailis were never considered to be Muslims. They were the Abbasids had the Baghdad Manifesto, and in which they actually wrote in conjunction with other Shiites that declared the Agha Khanis to be, or Ismailis I should say, to be not Muslims. They would actually say they were founded by a Jew who had they were magicians, and that they despised the Quran and the Sharia, and they had no care for prophecy, and essentially these are all attributes of people that are not Muslims, right? But nonetheless, let's get into the subject matter, the main bulk of this discussion, and it happens to be on Twitter, and I'm going to share my screen here. And so I don't know if you can see this, but here's a tweet by our brother Jake, and he's responding to something that Khalil Andani has posted. By the way, Khalil says, Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, regularly pronounces takfir on Shia Muslims, calling us kuffar who deserve a death penalty in Sunni fiqh. When I told Jake how this takfir endangers Shias worldwide, he himself told me, I just don't care. Jake now falsely accuses and endangers the life of Hasnain. Now, by the way, what Jake is showing out is that the Shias have opened rooms where they mock the deaths of Sunni. They have made death threats. They have talked about even having their imams come. One of us told us that, hey, watch out, Ali's going to come and kill us. Essentially threatening us with some fictitious imam that's still alive. So Jake just highlighted these things. And so this is the response. Rather than acknowledging and saying, hey, there are extremist Shiites who do want to commit acts of violence, just like we've seen in Hezbollah, we've seen in Hashd al-Sha'bi, we have seen the Alawites in Syria, we've seen the Houthis in Yemen, and even in the past we've seen extremism among the Ismailis like the Qaramita. And these are things that we have witnessed. And so there are violent among them as well too. But rather than recognizing that, he simply wants to play victim and say the people that Jake is exposing are now victims of bullying or something like this. So Jake did actually respond very well in kind. Now, one of the things that I do want to focus on is the comment here. By the way, just before we get there, let's look at this, right? Shia Muslims calling us kuffar. He doesn't talk about all Shiite Muslims. By the way, we never do that. People from Ahl Sunnah do not say that by general every single person. No, we have to know what they believe in, and we have to see what it is exactly their views are. If they hold particular views of kufr, then the pronunciation on them can be made, depending on provided that the conditions are met. And the idea that the idea of mentioning death penalty. Jake does not mention the death penalty at all. This is Khalil Andani's interjection, or he's actually injecting this into the argument. No one ever talked about the death penalty, right? First of all, I mean, Muslims, the average layman, the Muslim who is just a common Muslim, who's not in power, who does not have legislative authority, has no ability to pronounce or carry out any justice on somebody or any kind of legal ruling on somebody. This is vigilantism, and we all condemn this, and it's un-Islamic. It can only be done by a qadi in a court with Islamic law, with the appropriate Islamic justice system. So this notion, this fear-mongering of saying that, the death penalty and kuffar and basically crying around, right? This is he's actually espousing Islamophobic rhetoric now. This is what he's doing. He's with the likes of Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller and just all of these anti-Islamic Islamophobes, like even David Wood, apostate prophet, all these people that espouse this kind of behavior. Basically, Khalil is saying that he agrees with their analysis on majority of Muslims and what we believe in, which is the irony here. But let's go down here. What he goes on, he goes, your takfir is a death sentence for us. I don't care about you personally. A recent Muslim convert who has an incoherent whatever, I think he's forgetting English, but quotes Salafis and who used to takfir Sunnis 3 years ago, accepting me. You don't speak for Ahl Sunnah. If Sunnis knew your odd beliefs, they would takfir you too. So first of all, I want to address the first part of this anyways, okay? The idea that takfir is a death sentence, this is nonsense. Takfir is simply a distinguishing between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. It is a legal verdict or a Shari'i principle in which you determine the difference between one and the other. And the reason for this is because they do have legal implications, but not every single legal implication means death. There are things like, for example, can you marry an Agha Khani? They would say absolutely not. A Muslim woman could not marry them, and we cannot marry their women, right? Because they are kuffar to us. They are not from Ahl al-Kitab. They're kafir. Their beliefs are kufr. Can they be buried in the Muslim cemetery? No, they would have to be buried with the Jews and the Christians and other kuffar, not with the Muslims. What about inheritance? If one child were to become an Agha Khani or Ismaili, if he were to fall for that, God forbid, and become a kafir, could he inherit from you? These are all legal questions. You see how the lack of understanding of Khalil Andani, his immediate understanding and equating of Sharia and law and death penalty. This is exactly where his perverted mind goes to. He doesn't realize because, and this is partly because of his ignorance. The Ismailis and the Agha Khanis, they have no concept of fiqh. They have their Qiyamah as-Sughra, which basically means their fat man who's their demigod has basically told them that there's no such thing as, everything has been suspended. You don't have to pray, you don't have to fast, you can drink booze, you can party, you can have half-naked women on your jet skis, you can take interest, all these things, the entire Islamic Sharia has been dismantled. And so they don't have a concept of how usul al-fiqh works and how these things operate, because it's of no importance to them. So again, the idea that making takfir automatically means a death sentence, no, it does not mean that, especially in a case where neither majority of us here on Twitter, I would say almost everybody, does not have any authority to exact justice on anybody, right? And we certainly don't call for vigilantism. Right? And if he wants to make the argument that this increases the chance of someone dying, it's nonsense. This is exactly the argument that kuffar and like Islamophobes will make. And so he's embracing this Islamophobic idea. If anything, we see in history, the Qaramita, who were Ismailis, by the way, they behaved like this. They were the first to be, assassins and run around and kill people and terrorize them physically and psychologically by, leaving daggers on their bed and killing them and staying around, intimidating them. And just for anyone that Hassan Sabbah thought that would be negatively affecting the Ismaili dawah. And so we see this occurring among the Ismailis very early on. And this is something that Khalil Andani would never concede to because he's embarrassed by it. But nonetheless, then he goes on to attack Jake and the personal ad hominems and all this stuff, whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. We don't care what a kafir thinks about Muslims, right? Whatever Jake used to believe is irrelevant, right? I mean, the Sahaba were not always Muslims, and they used to believe other things before. They used to be pagans, some of them. Some of them used to have entirely haram lifestyles, but Allah guided them and they became Muslims. But Khalil Andani obviously does not really care about that because he's also, it's irrelevant to him because these people don't mean anything to him because traditionally in Tashayya, in any version of it, the Sahaba are generally frowned upon and considered kuffar. And the irony behind all of this is that Khalil does not want to be honest with himself about his own beliefs. And that is that in Agha Khaniism, you have to recognize the Imam of your time. And if you don't, you are excluded from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Waliya'udhu billah, this is a kufri belief, but this is what they believe. So by default, that is saying that we are condemned to the hellfire, which is saying we are kuffar. That's just a nice way of saying you're kuffar. In the next life, you will be kuffar. Right? So essentially, this is the point. But he's going to argue that, well, even if we call you kuffar, there's no worldly harm to you. And this is completely false. We've seen how the history of the Fatimids, where even historians have written that under the different caliphs or rulers or kings of the Fatimid dynasty, how they have treated Sunni Muslims and how they subjugated them, and to the point where they were in fear of their lives, and at some point there were even some forced conversions. They were not allowed to hold positions. They were not allowed to preach their religion at all. Sunni Islam, Orthodox Islam was outlawed, like any teaching of it or professing of it. However, they couldn't really do anything about it because they were the minority. They didn't have the ability. They knew if they tried to start a war with the common folk, meaning that the majority of the people who were not them, it would be a problem for them. They would lose it because they were already on a downslide, and they already struggled to get control in Egypt, right? And this is when they tried many times to start their conquest as violent invaders and killers of Muslims, by the way, because this was a Muslim state. By the way, at that time, so they also did impose their jihad on Muslims and killed them. And so Khalil conveniently ignores this, but nonetheless, I am going to wrap up this video. I just wanted to talk about this and show you the incoherence of these modern-day Agha Khanis. And the irony is that this is a spokesperson for them. Even the 12ers are using this person as a mouthpiece on Clubhouse. And the irony is that even 12ers don't consider them to be Muslims. This is the irony behind all of this. I don't know how much more of a contradiction this could be. But I will let you guys decide this and let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. I think this guy's a complete joke. I don't care if he graduated from, Harvard or Yale or Oxford. It's very clear from my interaction with this individual on Twitter that he has no idea what the basics of usul al-fiqh and basically how we derive rulings in Islam. Not to claim that I'm a scholar, I'm a layman and, don't have very much knowledge on it. But even my very little knowledge is able to refute a lot of what he's saying, and is an indication to me that he doesn't know what he's speaking about, and he's trying to just espouse Islamophobic rhetoric in order to make Ismailism or Agha Khanism look good, and try to remain within the fold of Islam, even though traditionally they've never been considered to be Muslims. And the notion that we cannot make takfir and it's dangerous to make takfir is nonsensical. We have Christians and Muslims and Jews and Hindus that have lived in Muslim predominantly Muslim areas, and even under Muslim rule for that matter. So the point being is that there's a complete agenda here, and I thought I wanted to take some time to highlight it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys liked the content, please make sure to subscribe, and don't forget to smash that like button, because we want to help the algorithm and help our fellow, brethren in humanity see the message, see the hypocrisy, and see the contradictions, and then, inshallah, be guided to the traditional Islam. Inshallah. That is it for this episode, guys. As always, take care of yourselves, and we will see you on the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.